most of the Paris attackers had ties to Belgium, specifically to an area known as Molenbeek in the outskirts of Brussels. Within days of the shooting, Molenbeek was raided by police. Several people were arrested but released after questioning.
In our second CBSN Originals report, Vladimir Duthiers traveled to that suburb, which has become a fertile ground for extremists. There, he met with the mother of a young man who was recruited by ISIS. Here's a preview.
My son left in January 2014. The recruitment dured 4 months, only 4 months. I'm Geraldine. I'm a mother of a young who went to Syria. He was recruited to went there when he was 18 years old. I hate the recruiters. Because they don't have the courage to go there.
Vladimir Duthiers is here. Vlad, you can just, the heartbreak in that woman's voice. How were you able to track her down? Was she willing? How easy was it to get her to speak about this?
It wasn't easy to track her down. Initially, we were looking first in France for perhaps somebody, a family, a member connected to one of the attackers in the Paris attacks. And when we went to Brussels, we realized that we actually by chance saw her on Belgian TV, and she was doing an interview talking about the support group that she had created in the wake of her son's death. And so we set into motion the tracking her down with our fixers, and ultimately, I think almost towards the very end of our trip there, we found her and were able to spend at least a good evening with her talking about her son Anis.
I'm sure you're going to get into this more in depth in the report, but tell us a little bit more about Molenbeek and why is it such a breeding ground for terrorists there?
A couple of things. Belgium in general is considered right now the #1 country in the West that ISIS has targeted and is recruiting from to send fighters to Syria and Iraq. And part of the reasons for that, the country is known by many in Europe as almost Belgistan. And what that means is that because there are so many different, there are 6 different governments in Belgium. There is a federal government that is responsible for Brussels. There's a government for the Walloon region, which is a French-speaking. There's a government for the Flanders region, which is Flemish-speaking. There's a government for Flemish speakers and for French speakers and for German speakers. And then you have all of these different police forces that are representative of those communities. In many cases, they don't talk to each other. Then in Molenbeek, you have a local police force, and then you have a federal police force. Well, the federal police force doesn't give any intel to the local police force. So these attackers, one attacker, Abaoud, his apartment and his family's apartment was literally 100 yards away from the mayor's office. We stood at the door of the mayor's office and looked across the plaza to his apartment, and I said to the mayor, this terrorist was living right in front of your eyes, in front of your doorstep. And she said, well, it's not the job of the local police to know what is happening here. The federal police doesn't share the intelligence with us.
That is really interesting, because one of the questions that kept on coming up was, how were these guys able to go to Syria and come back? How were they, at least one of them, able to participate in the siege in Paris and then go right back to Brussels, right? So last week you showed us Saint-Denis, which is a suburb of Paris, and this is another sort of suburb in Belgium. What's the difference? Did you see that, like a sort of palatable difference?
Yeah, in Saint-Denis, well, you know, you guys know I spent a third of my life living in Europe, specifically in France, but I also lived in Luxembourg, which is in the Benelux region, which encompasses Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And Molenbeek was a very different vibe. I felt that eyes were on us. I felt people were watching us. I felt people were more aggressive. Understand that Belgium and Brussels specifically was under a state of emergency, so there was a lockdown in effect. But still, it felt very, very strange as opposed to Saint-Denis, which felt like Queens, New York. You know, a multi-ethnic immigrant community of people that were welcoming and open. In Molenbeek, it felt very different. And the other interesting thing about Molenbeek and Belgium in general, not anyone spoke French or Dutch or Flemish or whatever it is. You know, they mostly spoke Arabic. And I learned something when I was in Belgium, which I did not know in all my time living in Europe. If you want to become a French citizen, it takes 10 years and you have to speak French. It is the national language of France. If you want to become a Belgian citizen, you don't ever have to speak Flemish or French or German or anything. So a lot of the immigrants there never even, we talk about integration in France. If you don't even speak the language of the country that you're living in, you can have your own little community, and then you have these open borders all around Europe, which allows people to travel to and from other countries. Then you're back in your community where police don't speak Arabic. The police chief of Molenbeek said they don't have any, they have 1 or 2 officers that speak Arabic. They don't have enough. So it's very easy to hide there. It's very easy to ferment this sort of radicalism that we've seen. And that is, and it's also, Molenbeek specifically, a crossroads for very big black market arms trade.
All right,
Wow.
Vlad, so much to look forward to tonight, such powerful reporting. You can see Vlad's entire report on Molenbeek, terror recruiting ground, tonight at 8 and 11 p.m. Eastern, right here on CBSN. Vlad, thanks a lot.